Greetings, family. Welcome to another episode of Clear Thinking with Brother Dulani. In this episode, my people, I want to do a presentation, a masterclass on what is Pan-Africanism. Because in the last couple of years, I've been hearing a lot of distortion, a lot of people saying a lot of slick talk about Pan-Africanism. They've been trying to throw shades at Pan-Africanism. Somehow there is a resurgent in this hatred for Pan-Africanism or resentment towards Pan-Africanism. And I want to come here and I want to set the record straight. Because this is Clear Thinking with Brother Dulani. And here we defend Pan-Africanism. We advocate for Pan-Africanism. But I think for the young audiences and for the new people who are coming up, and you hear a lot of the different ideologies, the different worldviews, I think it's important that you have a clear understanding of what Pan-Africanism, because if you're about knowledge, if you're about the unity of African people, you're going to hear about a few movements amongst our people. If you study our history, you're going to run into Pan-Africanism. You're going to come into this movement, and you're going to hear about this movement. You're going to read about this movement. And chances are you probably have heard it on social media. You probably have heard a lot of people giving their opinion about what is Pan-Africanism. And I think that it is the right time for me to come and kind of like set the record straight and what is Pan-Africanism. So let's get into this presentation, because I think it is very much needed in this day and age that we understand clearly when we say Pan-Africanism, what do we mean by Pan-Africanism? And I must say to you, my people, that Pan-Africanism is like an unfinished dream. It's like a vision for our people. It's like an aspiration for the unification and the development of our people. This presentation is about how Pan-Africanism laid the foundation for African unity, security, and development. This is a comprehensive exploration of the movement that reshape a continent and a global people. My name is Brother Dulani. Welcome to the fundamentals of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism represents far more than a political ideology. It is a global, intellectual, political, cultural, and economic movement that has shaped the destiny of over 1 billion people. At the heart lies a profound truth that peoples of African descent, whether on the continent or scattered across the diaspora, share a common history, share a common destiny, identity forged through centuries of struggles and resilience, particularly in the last 500 years. Without understanding our history, without understanding the enslavement of our people, without understanding the colonization and now the neo-colonization of our people, it is difficult to understand where Pan-Africanism fits in. Because Pan-Africanism is what lays the foundation for the liberation and development of our people. It provides the basis for us to collaborate, for us to operationalize our unity, and to struggle collectively, globally, for a common cause of African liberation and African unification around the world. This new movement emerged from the understanding that unity and collective action were essential to overcome the systematic exploitation, systematic oppression that African peoples face worldwide. It is very important that we understand this. It encompasses not just political liberation, but also cultural reemergence, renaissance, rebuilding. It also encompasses economic self-determination and the restoration of the dignity of African people everywhere. So you see, of all of the movements and all of the ideologies that we hear about that's floating around in the African community, Black community, the diaspora community on the continent, Pan-Africanism is the foundation. Pan-Africanism is the real deal in terms of an ideology with a shared African identity that transcends borders. So what are the core principles of this ideology that we call Pan-Africanism? Some of the core principles is unity against our common and collective adversaries, our cultural and social consciousness, our economic self-reliance, and solidarity across the diaspora. I want us to understand, my people, that these are the principles that guide us. The core principle is that we have a shared identity. We have a common ancestry as African people. We were all taken from Africa. We were all started on the continent of Africa. And we all was taken from the continent. And we were scattered. And we was brutalized. We were enslaved and exploited. And all manner of evil was done to our people. And because of this, it has necessitated that we recuperate, that we rebuild, we find a common ground to unify, to come together to see if we can assist in liberating each other. So whether we be in the Afrobean, which is the Caribbean, whether it be in North America, Central America, South America, or in Europe, or on the continent of Africa, we have a foundation in which we can work with. Pan-Africanism provides us with that bridge. It provides us with that network. It provides us with a common language for us to build our unity, to develop a cultural consciousness, and to develop our economic self-reliance. And in practical terms, it assists us in our liberation on the ground, where Africans assist African in their liberation struggle. There are a few visionaries that have helped to shape this movement over the years. And I have to give a shout out to W.E.B. Du Bois, because he was one of the pioneers of the Pan-African Congresses. Because there was a few Pan-African Congress that was held back in the days when this movement started out in the early 1900s to gather African people around the world and unify them under one banner and to help to liberate our people. So we have to give respect to some of the pioneers. Marcus Garvey was also another pioneer in the Pan-African movement, but he championed more of the collection of African people and in a mass movement to return Black to Africa, to reclaim our continent, to reclaim our land, and to build our African empire. That was Marcus Garvey's contribution, and also to tell us that self-reliance, love ourselves, to empower ourselves economically. That was also, he became a key component of Pan-Africanism as we move forward and build a movement. Kwame Nkrumah was also a major pioneer in the Pan-African movement. He championed the unification of Africa under one global, one continental African superpower. And I know many have heard that he said the independence of Ghana means nothing if it's not tied to the independence of all African people. That is a core principle of Pan-Africanism. Jomo Kenyatta was also a champion of African cultural identity and self-governance. He was also one of those early pioneers in the movement. Patrice Lumumba was a visionary leader who fought for genuine independence and economic sovereignty for the Congo. These are some of the icons and many more that we can mention along the way that have pushed for a continental-wide, global um, um, a unification of our people, a global solidarity of African people in our history. So Africa must unite, and we have heard it over the years. And a very popular quote from Kwame Nkrumah is, divide and rule is the plan of the colonial powers. If we are to remain free, if we are to enjoy the full benefits of Africa's rich resources, we must unite to plan for our total defense and the full exploitation of our material and human material and means for the full interest of all African people. This is what Kwame Nkrumah advocate for. This is wrapping Pan-Africanism in one phrase, that we as African people have to regain control of our resources. We are the one who have to benefit from it. And it is in our defense, our total defense, and our total exploitation of our own resources. That means that we have to develop, we have to be the one who process our minerals, process the riches on the African continent and in other territories in which African people control. That is what Kwame Nkrumah advocated for. But the key element there is the total defense, a continental defense, matter of fact, a global defense. Because with that, you have the foundation to protect ourselves. So the fundamental belief of Pan-Africanism, it rests at this, there's an important reality that we have to understand, that unity is a force for our liberation. Individual African nations, newly independent and economic fragile, remain perilously vulnerable to external manipulation and neo-colonial control. The colonial powers had deliberately fragmented the continent, drawing arbitrary borders that divided ethnic groups, separated families, and created artificial states designed for exploitation rather than prosperity. My people, this is the heart of it. If you try to go alone, colonial powers, the imperialist powers will crush you. Pan-Africanism is the unification of African power, African countries, African groups, African nations under a collective defense system. Because newly dependent countries are fragile by its very nature. Lack of infrastructure, lack of finance, lack of skills, lack of almost everything needed to build a nation is lacking when you become independent. And that is what many of our countries across the Caribbean, across Latin America, across the African continent have faced. Fragile. We was vulnerable. So many of these neo-colonial governments can be easily manipulated, easily controlled by the IMF, the World Bank, by the United States of America, by the European Union. Many of the colonial powers can easily manipulate individual countries, just pick them off one at a time, because many of these countries are too fragile, too weak to be able to defend themselves. So they become victims, either through economic or through military, and many times through political manipulation of their people and the economy. and even their political systems. So that was a fragile existence. And over the last 50 to 60 years, we have seen a dramatic move towards African self-reliance and taking control of our destiny and wrestling the power of our countries away from the imperialists and their puppets and taking it and putting it in the hands of revolutionary forces to bring about the kind of changes that we want to see as African people. So unity must not merely be a desirable or a vision. It was understood as the only viable path to genuine liberation. That if we really want to be liberated, if we really want to be powerful, we have to unite. Political sovereignty free from external interference, economic self-determination. These are the elements that's needed to break the chains of dependency. And we need to revive the best of African culture. This is how we are able to go forward. Self-reliance, self-control of our sovereign country, take control of our political sovereignty and our independence. Build the best infrastructure possible for scientific, technological, and cultural development of African people. This is what Pan-Africanism is about. It's to lay the foundation, provide the foundation on which we can build a unified global power to protect African people. And in the process of protecting, we're also developing. So science and technology has to be a key component of our development. And these are the core vision and the basis for our unity. We have to unite around a collective defense. We have to unite around developing our scientific infrastructure, our technological infrastructure. Because if we have a defense has to be linked to technology. Our defense has to be linked to our scientific infrastructure to empower those who are authorized to defend and protect our nation with the best equipment possible. We have to make sure that we solidify our own sovereign control of the science and technology within our global movement for liberation. Now, the weapons of division. And this is what Pan-Africanism comes to resolve. The colonial strategy. This is strategy number one. European powers deliberately tries to create ethnic tensions and artificial borders to weaken resistance. This is one of the strategy of the imperialist forces today. They try to create different tensions and because a lot of these borders from the beginning was artificial. They was arbitrarily carved up by outside forces. Most of the colonial borders in Africa today were not designed by African people. They was actually designed by European people in Europe. And not one African was sitting at the table. And that is a reality that we have to face as an African people. And that's why Pan-Africanism come to reverse that. We want to abolish these artificial borders and call for the free movement of people and goods across the continent and across the African world. Over 10,000 distinct ethnic groups divided into arbitrary nation state. That's, something we have to deal with. Dependency is another weapon of division. Economies designed for extraction and not development of not development or self-sufficiency. I've spoken about that on many occasions. That how our economy were designed for extraction, for imperialist extraction of our resources, and then they convert the resources add value to it, and sell it back to us. We looked at, the cobalt in Democratic Republic of Congo and in other parts of Africa, how they would take the cobalt, they would take the lithium, and then they would take it outside of Africa, and they would process it and sell it back to us at almost over 7,000% markup on what they paid for it. We cannot allow that kind of dependence, that kind of manipulation to continue amongst our people. So unity, Pan-Africanism is the antidote against this divide and rule, this colonial tactics. Pan-Africanism emerged as the most direct antidote of vaccination against the strategy of division, offering a vision of solidarity that transcends the artificial borders imposed by colonialism and imperialism. The ideological fuel for liberation. Pan-Africanism provides more than inspiration. It offers the essential ideological framework that power the decolonization movement across the continent and across the world. Leaders from vastly different contexts, from Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, Julius Nyerere in Tanzania, from Jomo Kenyatta to Sekou Touré in Guinea, found common cause through shared philosophy. Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism provides us with a shared language. It gives independent leaders a common vocabulary to articulate their struggle. For young people who want to get involved and want to know about what are the nomenclature, what are the paradigm that we're talking about, what are the core principles, what is Pan-Africanism? When you study Pan-Africanism, you will understand that this is the movement that gives us the best opportunity to liberate ourselves. It gives us a united front, a network of solidarity that strengthens the resistance movements, that we, wherever we are in solidarity with everyone else who are struggling, all the communities of resistance around the world who are struggling, who are resisting colonialism, who are resisting imperialism. We have to be in solidarity with each other wherever we are, whether we be in the Caribbean, whether we be in Central and South America, whether we be in Africa, whether we be in the United States of America or in any parts of Europe. As long as we are resistance, and we have to be in solidarity with those who are fighting for liberation, fighting for better treatment, fighting for a higher standard of living, fighting for political recognition. And Pan-Africanism provides us with the moral authority it gives us an ethical foundation to challenge the legitimacy of imperialism. Because if we are not challenging the power structure, then it is just a dream. We're just fooling ourselves. The AU was a compromise. Matter of fact, it's the Organization of African Unity is now defunct, but it was the compromise, because at the time, there was two groupings. One wanted to do straight unification of the continent, and one wanted to do a gradual approach. You may have heard of the Casablanca group, and then you have heard of the Monrovia group. Well, there was the compromise in the birth of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. The mandate was a complete liberation, end of colonialism and apartheid in every corner of Africa. Unity and solidarity, foster cooperation and collective actions amongst member states. Solidarity and sovereignty and defense. Protect the independence and territorial integrity of African nations. And this became problematic because there was many who felt that we should not be honoring the territorial integrity of these artificial borders that was created by non-Africans. And also a continental progress, promote development, and improve living standard across Africa. So that was pretty much the mandate at the time. It was about 32 newly independent African nations who came together to create, the organization. Well, it grew, to about 32 different nations. So we have the Great Debate, the Casablanca Group, led by Kwame Nkrumah. They wanted immediate political federation, strong central continental government, rapid integration of the continent, a common defense and foreign policy, the vision, United States of Africa, the Casablanca Group. And then there was the Monrovia Group, who wanted a more moderate, gradual approach, step-by-step integration, respect for national sovereignty, functional cooperation first, build trust before deep union, vision, confederation of state. So you can see the Monrovia Group wanted to just like this gradual approach. But, they came together in the compromise, and the compromise was what became the Organization of African Unity, which represent a historical compromise between these two visions. While it fell short of Nkrumah's dream of immediate political union, it achieved something profound: creation of a permanent forum where African leaders could meet, cooperate, and speak with one voice to the world. It was a talking shop to many people. We got together, we talked, we celebrated, and then we continue and go back to our exploitation, go back to poverty, go back to low standard of development, go back to exploitation. And it was just a mess for a while. But I think we had to change. And I think in the end, the Organization of African Unity came to an end, particularly after the Rwandan genocide, when it stood by and didn't do anything. It allowed the genocide to went on for too long, and according to some estimate, up to 500,000 people lost their life, and the OAU did not do anything to help prevent it. And it was felt that a lot of people felt that we cannot sit by again and allow this to happen to African people. So we have to create a new body with who willing to move and stop any type of genocide to happen again on the continent. A divided continent will forever remain vulnerable. And this idea of vulnerability is one of the key concepts that I want us to focus on, and how we can turn that vulnerability into strength, how we can move from vulnerability to a position of strength to face our challenges as we move forward. That has been an issue that we have had as a people, is to how do we develop the strength and the resilience to face imperialism, to face natural disaster, to face, all kind of challenges, with education and healthcare and, housing and poverty. These are the things that we have to get into a position where we can actually solve problems. So, this idea of non-interference, it really led us down during the Rwandan genocide. So we had to move from non-interference to non-indifference. So the OAU founding principle is non-interference. That means a total respect for the borders. That means no matter what happened, you could be slaughtering millions of people in your country, and we would stand aside and look. So that is how that one of the fundamental core principle of the OAU was like a non-interference. We will not meddle in the internal affair of a particular country. But, you know, that principle prevented intervention, even in the case of genocide, mass atrocities, and human disaster. Rwanda 1994 genocide exposed the fatal flaws of this non-intervention thinking. And as a result, it led to the dissolving of the OAU. And in 2002, the African Union was born. And it was based on non-indifference. It's a revolutionary shift. The AU Peace and Security Council gained rights to intervene in cases of war, crimes, genocide, or unconstitutional government. So for the first time, we had a continental body who was capable, or at the very least, have a mandate to intervene, would have the legal or political framework to intervene. So it creates a way we can have active engagement, but it still depends on the will of those member states to actually do something. So Pan-African, so the evolution of Pan-African security, the transformation from the OAU to the African Union in 2002 mark a watershed moment in Pan-African institutional development. This was not merely a rebranding exercise. It represents a fundamental evolution in Pan-African thinking, born from painful lessons, the recognition that absolute non-interference could enable atrocities. The AU Peace and Security Council, modeled in part on the UN Security Council, but uniquely African in character, represent one of the most significant achievements of Pan-Africanism. It embodies the principle that African problems require African solution, delivered through African institutions with African leadership. However, in reality, the AU has been a toothless lion. It has not shown any engagement in an aggressive way to bring about any serious solution continentally. It has not done anything to show that it can act or is willing to act, or none of that. One thing that the AU needs is actually a standing army to enforce or to implement, any policy in dealing with African security. We don't see that at the moment. And in many parts of the movement, the AU is seen as just a neo-colonial puppet, imperialist institutions used to maintain imperialist extraction, and not really there to develop, not there to protect African interests. So that discussion continues. This is about Pan-Africanism. This presentation is here to highlight some of the movement towards Pan-Africanism. And no matter what we say about the OAU or the African Union, there were attempts. That was the attempt at Pan-Africanism by those who were involved in this setup, in these institutions. However, these institutions have not lived up to our expectation and to our vision of Pan-Africanism in terms of radical transformation. So that is why there's a reluctancy to endorse or to embrace the African Union, because it does not have the teeth or the power or the will to implement radical changes across Africa. So the colonial economic legacy, we talk about that. We have to break out of this economic dependency. We cannot allow these companies to be extracting the resources of Africa. We have to move towards take control of our resources, take control of our own processing of our resources. And I know that there are some African countries now who are putting a deadline on extraction of their resources. They will be stopping the extraction of their resources and will move towards processing and adding value to the resources before it is exported or utilized within their own country. So, from roads to railroad, um, mines, plantation to ports. Um, but and I spoke on this before. If you look at most of the roads and the railroads, they ran from the mine to the railroad to the ports, and from the plantation to the ports. But there was never a connection between different African cities and African communities. That was not the idea. So we have that mandate where we have to connect African countries. And, the transcontinental railway track that is on this design at the moment will be one of those projects that will be helping to piece together Africa, where we can now begin to move goods across the continent by rail and also by airlift. But this rail system will provide us an opportunity to create trillions of dollars in value as we begin to integrate African countries and be able to export and import between each other in a very seamless way. So, even the banking system is now breaking down. They now have the Pan-African payment and settlement system that is coming on board, where African companies and individuals and countries can actually settle their debt between each other without the need for external system or external banking system. We can actually make our payment, make our purchases, settle our financial value. The breakdown of everything that we do, we don't have to go outside of Africa to get that settled. We can actually do that amongst ourselves. And that is what the Pan-African payment and settlement system, we can settle our own deals between us without going to outside forces to do that. So what is our Pan-African vision? What is the economic vision? Well, we talk about self-reliance a lot on this channel. We're talking about break the dependency on former colonial powers, and we got to diversify our economies. We're talking about regional integration. We see what's going on in the Sahel with the alliance of the alliance of the Sahel state with Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. That is a classic example of uniting, integrating economy. And now we'd be glad if we can get Togo to join in, so we can have access to the port, access to the sea, and potentially with Guinea-Bissau joining in, and possible with Chad joining in. It'll be a powerful force to deal with. Pooling our resources, we need to combine our resources. Whatever we have, we need to focus on our strength, and we assist each other where there's weaknesses. Intra-Africa trade, we discussed that in terms of we need to build those interconnected, those roads and those railways and those airports across Africa to connect Africa, interconnecting flights that carry not just people, but actually airlifting goods from one location to the other. Rapid industrial development, that goes without saying. We need to build our own factories, build our own laboratories, and we need to manufacture and process our own goods and add value to these goods, and we can sell them to amongst ourselves and also to the outside world. So these are some of the vision of Pan-Africanism. So we have talked about some of the economic blueprint. We had the plan, the Lagos Plan of Action back in the 1980s. You can look into that. The Abidjan Treaty, we have had, a lot of that have taken place. We have regional blocks. You have ECOWAS. And these are examples of African people trying to unite, in their own way, in their own imperfect way. These regional blocks are not necessarily the ideal vision, but they represent the steps that we have taken so far. And if I'm going to give you a presentation about Pan-Africanism, this is the attempt by some Africans at coming together. And that coming together can be classified as Pan-Africanism. We have ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community of West African State. It pioneering free movement protocols and monetary integration. You have the East African Community, advancing custom union and a common market integration. Now, ECOWAS is mostly in West Africa. You're talking about Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Sierra Leone, and you have also, well, they used to include Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali and others, but because of the alliance of the Sahel state, they have actually excluded those countries of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali from ECOWAS because they're saying that they took over by military means. But something was definitely needed there because we couldn't continue on that path. East African countries, including Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and a few others, I think Rwanda, they all are part of the East African community. Then you got the SADC, South African Development Community, which includes South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Namibia. But South Africa is really, they want to dictate and decide who get what. But now, with African people in control of South Africa, there's more work being done there. And much more can be said about that. On a later date, we can talk about Southern Africa. And then there's also the Arab Maghreb Union, that's North Africa, which is Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and all that. And then you got Economic Community of Central African States, which include the Congo, Central African Republic, and a few other small countries in that region. So just to get an idea that these are miniature efforts at a unifying. They're not the ideal situation, but they're at least making that step. And these are infrastructure that we probably can at a later date integrate into a superstructure for the continental unity. So while they may be fragile at the moment or ineffective at the moment, in the future they could be transformed into more powerful institutions for change and to bring about the vision of Pan-Africanism. So regional economic communities serve as the building blocks, the wings of the continental economic integration envisioned by Pan-African pioneers. So I don't want no one to think that those in itself, those regional blocks or organization are Pan-Africanism in and of itself, but they represent steps, along the vision towards Pan-Africanism. Ultimately, there is a all-African continental free trade area agreement. It was launched back in 2019. It represents the single largest free trade area in the world by numbers of participating countries, 54 nations with a combined population of 1.3 billion people and a GDP of $3.4 trillion. So that is the continental free trade area. That's what it represents. 54 countries in Africa, 1.3 billion people, and $3.4 trillion in GDP. That's the overall production, gross domestic product of Africa itself. This is not merely a trade agreement. It is the most direct and ambitious expression of Pan-African economic vision since the independence era. The modern successor to the Lagos Plan of Action and the realization of the dream articulated by Nkrumah and his contemporary 6 decades later. I said that, I mentioned that because the vision is always beautiful. And these vision that they're talking about are very, very beautiful. No one is in their right mind oppose a single continental market for goods and services. No one oppose enabling free movements of business people and individuals. No one oppose intra-African trade. No one oppose resolving colonial border disputes. All these border barriers that we have for African trade and African movement of people, and the disrespect and the exploitation that take place on these borders. Everyone agreed that they should be torn down. And everyone agreed that Africa should be in rapid industrialization, and we should add value to our resources, and instead of sending our raw material outside, and promote the promotion of economic diversity. So the vision of the all-African continent, the African continental free trade area. No one opposed that dream, and it is not realized yet. However, we have to be clear that we need an economic system, and this is where this goal, this aspiration kind of falls short. It doesn't address which economic system we should use. What are the methodology that we're going to use to bring about the elimination of poverty, the elimination of homelessness, the elimination of deplorable conditions across Africa? And that is where this all-African free trade agreement does not address these issues. But no one opposed to what the vision is and the dream is, as far as what I've mentioned so far. But we have to be honest about colonialism, neocolonialism, and imperialism. We have to find a way to rapidly develop our people. We have to find a way to move away from the clutches of imperialist control and take control of the economic sovereignty of the continent of Africa and use it for the benefit of African people. That is one of the great challenges. And if we don't unite on a continental basis for this vision to become a reality, it would only remain a dream and would never see reality. Because you can't possibly have all these things and our people are still living in poverty, still living in deplorable condition. And the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, the merchant class will be the one who benefit from all these policy movements. All this free trade, free movement of goods and services, the building of the continental highway system across Africa, the railway system, the airport system. It can, if we don't be careful, it can become a system where only a handful of super black African capitalists with their imperialist forces from outside benefiting from all this development, and not the majority of African people. We have to ensure that in all these policy, we center the people of Africa and the majority of the people of Africa, and how it will alleviate poverty or impoverishment, and begin a cycle of empowering our people economically, to be committed to building millions of homes to house our people, hospitals and schools. Those are some of the fundamental areas that we have to look into, that we have to address in our economic plan going forward. So The promise of economic unity. Look at the numbers, my people. 1.3 billion people, 3.4 trillion in GDP, 54 nations, 90% tariff elimination. That's the target for removing barriers to intra-African trade. So whatever the barrier is between African countries, the vision is to bring it down by 90%. Very noble. So the All-African Free Trade Area demonstrate that Pan-Africanism is not merely historical nostalgia. It is a living, evolving policy framework shaping Africa's future. It aims to finally dismantle colonial borders that has hampered intra-African trade for generations, fulfilling the economic integration dreams of the movement founders. Yes, you know, and we have to be very careful when we mention that this is the fulfillment of the founders' dreams or aspirations. The dreams and aspiration is for the development of African people. It's for the elimination of illiteracy, for the elimination of ill health, to repair the damage of colonialism and imperialism, to repair the damage of enslavement, to abolish the inequality and exploitation of our people, to stop the extraction of African resources. Those are fundamental to the vision of the founding fathers of Pan-Africanism. So while we welcome these vision and these dreams and these goals, these aspirations for integrating our people, for combining the population and creating a massive consumer market, but we also have to create a massive, prosperous people. The 3.4 trillion that is being created should reflect in the development of our people. We have to keep those goals in mind as we begin to move on these vision, as we begin to implement the vision of Pan-Africanism. So the foundation of an idea. Pan-Africanism provides the essential ideological blueprint and moral compass for the Africa today. Pan-Africanism, it provides the inspiration, it provides the leadership, the movement, it can provide the solidarity needed to bring about the liberation of African people. It can provide the unity, the peace and security, and the framework for our development. The dream is unfinished, but the foundation is strong. Each generation must build upon the work of those who came before us. Advancing Pan-Africanism vision is the ultimate fulfillment of Pan-Africanism. We must understand that Pan-Africanism is the best solution we have as African people. And it is one of the best ways to push against all this distortion that we hear across the internet, the infighting that's taking place amongst our people, the denigration that is coming out of some quarters, particularly out of America. It's so disappointing and embarrassing to hear some of the rhetoric that our people are actually using towards each other. It's embarrassing to know that so much work has been done to build solidarity, to build some type of cohesion between our people. And Pan-Africanism has been that vehicle, that bridge that have tried to unify our people, to put us on that one accord, to create a common language in which we can all communicate with. We all want to end colonialism. We all want to end capitalist exploitation. We all want to see our people prosper. But for some reason, there's some of us who don't want that. Some of us who have come along in the last 10, 15, 20 years with a distorted mind frame. We hear them in America. And it's sad to say, I see them in America in the last 10, 15 years. I've come along with a distorted view of our history, the weaponized miseducation, preaching denigration, preaching division, preaching hatred for African people. The most fundamental aspect of Pan-Africanism is that it celebrates the dignity of our people. It celebrates our collective achievement, our collective resistance to imperialism. We have resisted on the plantation during our enslavement. We have resisted on the continent of Africa. From the first ship came, we have been resisting. And we fought them on the ship, and we fought them on the land, and we fought them on the plantation, and we resisted throughout, discrimination and all kind of brutality. And we've always been there to support each other. From the Haitian Revolution to the plantations of Jamaica, to the fields of South Carolina, to the swamps of the Mississippi and Florida. We have been resisting, and we're inspired by the resistance of our people wherever they are. So it is a sadness to hear some of our African brothers in America, and I'm calling them out, who seems to be ashamed of their African heritage and want to pretend to be other people and want to denigrate Pan-Africanism and want to push against this ideology that comes to unify our people, to bring our people in solidarity with each other, so we can even share economically in our development. They push against it, And I really don't want to even start mentioning particular names because I don't want to divert from this presentation about what is Pan-Africanism. But Pan-Africanism is the best solution to unite our people. If we really want peace and security in Africa, we need an all-African continental army. That's how we bring about peace. Every African country contribute troops, contribute equipment, finance, provide leadership, political coverage. That is essential to Pan-Africanism, and an economic policy that prioritizes the elimination of poverty, the elimination of illiteracy, and the repairing of our people from the damages of enslavement, from the damages of colonialism, and the ongoing damages of neocolonialism, the elimination of imperialist exploitation. These are core elements, and it's a global movement because we want the best for our people wherever they are. So I want to thank you for coming on this journey with me. And thank you for listening to Clear Thinking with Brother Dulani. And I hope to see you next time. And do share, do like, and subscribe to this program while I bring you more on Pan-Africanism. I bring you more on African liberation and development, because I know it's not easy in this time. We are so distracted by so many elements that voices like this do not get here. No one seems to listen to voices of reasoning or clear thinking anymore. We want to be entertained, and we want shucking and jiving and all sort of things, distraction. We want to dance and boogie woogie all day, but we don't want to talk about the important issue facing our people. But I will continue to push clear thinking and to talk about the issues that matters to us. And I'm not alone. There are many on this journey. Support the voices of Pan-Africanism. We need our voices heard and maximized. We need to grow the voice of Pan-Africanism in order to inoculate ourselves. Pan-Africanism is the antidote to self-hate. Pan-Africanism is the antidote to European extraction. Pan-Africanism is that vaccination against all that denigration and hate that is coming out of many quarters around the world against their own self. It's the is the vaccination against white supremacy and colonial and continuous colonial rule across the world. Pan-Africanism is the key to bring about the planet repair that is so desperately needed in this world. So I want to thank you once again. My name is Brother Dulani, and this is Clear Thinking with Brother Dulani. Walk good, my people. Until next time, we'll meet again on the battlefield. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.